Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. This is gonna be my first video in like 4 months, just because I have no idea what to do in this off season other than just kind of wait, let all the news come out. Which right now, pretty much all of it has come out. So I'm gonna be doing an off season grades video for every region. Today I'm gonna be starting with Americas, just going through all 11 teams, just giving them a grade on how I think their off season went. I'm not gonna be necessarily ranking the rosters. I'm just gonna be ranking the moves that they made this offseason. So if you guys enjoy, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. I will be starting making videos a lot more, ramping up into the season here. But I did just need a break. I'll also be streaming a lot on Twitch, just VOD reviewing some players because I still got to watch a couple of the EMEA players that I haven't watched so I can actually make the video for them and Pacific. So go follow me on Twitter. I'll tweet out when I'm live. Go follow me on Twitch. You'll get the notifications, all that kind of stuff. But also subscribe on here. I might do community posts and stuff like that when I'm streaming. I usually forget to do that though, so whatever. Let's get started. All right, so we're going to start here with the team that everybody's going to be looking for, Sentinels. So this offseason, they swapped out Marved for John QT to play the IGL role and to ideally, in this world, put Pancata back onto Smokes. Now, I really like that they signed John Cutie. I think that gives them a real like stable IGL that is very good and will actually work very well with their coach and has in the past, Kaplan, who they played together on Ghost. So that shouldn't be an issue. My main issue and the reason this is not an A or even an A plus, actually I would have given this an A. It's just we don't know what's going on with Zelsis and Pancata. Personally, I still believe in my heart of hearts that it's gonna be Pancata, just because I don't think Celsius has looked good on the smokes in these offseason tournaments. I could be wrong. I do think Celsius does give a better like. I know this is just it's such a stupid thing, but it gives better like just vibes like as a player to me than Pancata does. And I think in the scenario that they do go with Celsius, he would end up being their Sentinel player, and John would be the Smokes player, which I then like that roster less. Um, so it's just really messy. I still believe that they're going to go with Pancata. I believe he's going to be playing with them in this, I think, Africa TV or whatever it's called tournament that's coming up where they're playing against Paper X and DRX and I forget who else is there. Um, but yeah, I think overall, this team had a very good offseason, but there's a lot of potential for them to screw it up in the next couple months and even during the season. So I just don't fully trust Sentinels. The org, the team, I think is very good. Tens has looked very good in these offseason tournaments. That's what I thought Zelsis was being signed for, just in case Tens sucked. But apparently he's going to be a Pancata replacement, potentially. It just seems really weird to me, and ends up giving this team a B plus when they probably should be getting an A minus or an A. And next up, we have 100 Thieves, who I'm actually going to give an A here. Now, this roster of Cryo, Asuna, EU, Bang, and Boostio, I don't have a large amount of faith in. I think they'll be a very good team, especially if they get Boostio here. I'm going to assume that they do, just because EG as an org is falling apart. We'll talk about that a little bit later. I'm not going to dive too into like EG as an org. But here with this 100 Thieves roster, they did keep the three players that I said that they should keep in Cryo, Asuna, and Bang. My issue a little bit with the faith in the roster is Cryo still being on that main duelist role most of the time. But they did show some ability to move him around onto Sentinel, which I would love to see a lot more of on different maps. They got probably the best initiator player they could get to replace Derek in EU. Maybe Calm, but I do think EU is a better replacement strictly for Derek than Calm would be. Um, so I really, really, really like that signing. I think he's the best option there. Maybe like buying out Trent from G2 or something like that would have been a better option, but that's not really viable. And then they got about the best option to replace Stellar as well in Boostio. I think Boostio was a perfect fit for this team just because, like what I was talking about with Zelsis earlier, just the vibes. Like he is the perfect vibes player, and I think he just gives so much energy to this team that it has lacked for years. I mean, even like back in the Steel, like Nitro Hiko days, I still think this team lacked a lot of energy, which Boostio absolutely gives to this team. Um, and I also think he's a great IGL and a great individual player. And I don't really think there's a real weakness on this roster. Um, I'm really high on Asuna. I think Bang will be very good, even though he has a history of playing well in off-season tournaments and then kind of dropping off towards the season. So I think he'll be a little bit worse than he's been um, at Red Bull, but I also think he will be very good when it gets to the season. Um, and yeah, my main concern is just Cryo playing main Jet, but honestly, the more I think about it, the more I'm fine with it, just because it's like the maps where he's going to be playing Jet are really heavy op maps like Ascent and Haven and Breeze. So I don't really think it's going to be that bad. Um, and Boostio, like maybe if Cryo's going to be switching to Sentinel on certain maps, Boostio's going to have to play Viper, which he hasn't played a ton of. But I think Boostio can play a lot of stuff, so I'm not really concerned with that. But overall, I do think this roster will be very good, or fairly good, not very good. And I think they had possibly the best offseason in all of Americas. Now, we were just talking about best off seasons in Americas. Energy might be up there. Um, just straight up, this is a super team. Made upgrades in every phase of the team except for IGL, which a lot of people are going to say they have concerns with this team not having a pure IGL, but like Ethan has IGL'd for teams in the past. It hasn't looked amazing, but it's fine. I mean, we know Crashes how vocal Crashes and Victor are as players. Marved has IGL'd in the past. That has not looked good. But overall, I think this team can like get a lot of pre-round calls from players, even like Demon One, Ethan, Vic or Marved, and then get the mid rounding from other players like Crashes and Victor along with Ethan. I think can do a lot of that. So I think Ethan would technically be defined as this team's IGL in that scenario. Um, but overall, I don't. That's not a concern to me. I think this team will be perfectly fine without that. Um, just like I do have an issue with this team's offseason of them initially choosing Crashies and Victor, or Crashies Victor and Chet, honestly, over FNS and Som, who, I mean, I prefer FNS and Som to Crashies Victor and Chet, but this roster is better than the roster that FNS would want to build. I think Marv is a better smokes player than Som. So now I'm not too concerned with it, but if they weren't able to get Demon One and Ethan from EG, this could go down to something like a C minus. Um, but again, like I said with Boostio, I'm just gonna assume that this team is gonna get those two players, just because EG is gonna fucking blow up as an org. So it's not really too much of a thing. Also, they removed the artists, which they had to do. So not gonna give them a ton of credit for that, but just another A here for another very good offseason. All right. Now, one of the more polarizing teams, I think, here is Cloud9 in their offseason. Now, if you had gone back before the 10 Invitational, a lot of people, not including myself, would probably have given this team like the C, or like if they were ranking the roster itself, it probably would have been a C or maybe low B tier roster to a lot of people. But now that they've played a lot of off-season tournaments, they're like top B, low A, depending on who you ask. And I've just been there on this team the whole time. Uh, I really like that they picked Zeppa over Zelsis. I don't think it was like a easy decision, but I do think it was the right one, which a lot of people criticize them for, which I didn't understand. Whippy and Vanity are extremely underrated. I think maybe underrated isn't the right word. Overhated is the right word, especially for Vanity, who waved at a couple people a couple times and then lost the next game, and then people thought, "Oh, this guy's just terrible," which makes no sense. He's IGL'd so many great teams in the past that it just doesn't make sense. He also looks really good as an individual for some reason. Um, so far in these off-season tournaments, hopefully that keeps up for him, but I'm not going to count on that. Oxy here has some absurdly good upside, like genuinely best player in America's type upside. Um, I don't think he'll get there this year, um, but it's in there, especially if he can keep his performance throughout the whole year, unlike last year. I mean, that's an insane player. I still don't think he's going to be playing like he is in these offseason tournaments, kind of similar to Bang, but I don't think he's going to be playing bad at all. I think I just moved him up. Like I did a bunch of player rankings on stream like a week ago, and I've been kind of moving players up and down through these off-season tournaments. And I actually have Oxy as my fourth rated duelist in Americas. Um, I'll probably make a video on all my player rankings once I'm done watching every player. Um, and I'll probably go back through and update some of them. But he is cracked. Um, the reason this isn't an A or an A minus is just because this isn't the best roster. I think they probably could have made better. Um, and I'm also just not thrilled that they lost Leaf and Zelsis, who are great players. I would have liked to see one of those two stay as a Sentinel player over Whippy, even though I do really like Whippy, and I do think he is very good. Um, I just think Zelsis or Leaf would have been better options in that role, especially with how Leaf played at the beginning of the year. Um, that was just, I mean, he was very, very good when they had Ye still. And then Zelsis was good on the Sentinel role towards the end of the year. So you'd like to see one of those two stay, but both of them might have just wanted to leave and go to either Sentinels or G2 instead of have to play Sentinel here for this team. And now the topic that I've been kind of referencing this whole fucking video, EG, who this new roster I do have is kind it's just a rumored roster of like scrim leaks and stuff of Baby Bay, Stellar, Corey, GMD, and Moose. But there's a good chance that Jaw and Calm sneak their way in here instead of some of these players. I think what we do know is that Corey and Stellar will be in this team no matter what. And then the fifth is unknown and could get really weird. The grade of just question marks is going to be that no matter what this roster is, because F doesn't describe this team's offseason. Um, and yeah, I don't have a ton to say because I don't know, the roster's just worse. Like, what do you want me to say here? I don't think it's that bad. I do really like Baby Bay. I think Stellar's calling could get better, paired here with Potter and him playing flex again, which is when his calling looked the best. GMD isn't that bad. He's a former caller. He can kind of help Stellar with that as well. Moose is a very good Sentinel player, and I think is kind of similar to Whippy in a way, in terms of level. Um, also, I am pretty sure Moose's former teammates with Stellar, so that could work out pretty well. I don't know if I think I mentioned Baby Bay, but overall, I do think Baby Bay is a very good player. I actually, had I made those rebuild videos last offseason, I would have had Baby Bay to 100 Thieves um, with their whole roster there. Of like, so it instead of Cryo, it would be Baby Bay to replace Will, um, which I still don't think would have worked out, but might have worked out a little bit better, in my opinion. But yeah, overall, I don't think this roster will be that bad personally, but you'll have to wait until my power rankings to see exactly how bad I think they will be. So now we have G2, who I'm going to grade in terms of the guard getting Leaf instead of Tex. Um, and that's going to get a B for me. Uh, I did really like Tex last year on Duelist personally. But to me, adding Leaf in gives you a little bit more flexibility with arrays, which Tex was not as good at. Um, and I think that's just an added bonus. Obviously, Leaf can also play other stuff if you want to move him to flex. And then, like, if say Jonah starts playing like shit, you can move Leaf to flex instead of Jonah and then go pick up another duelist player if you want. So I do like that, but I'm also still just not sure about Leaf in big games on duelist. I will keep bringing this up until he proves me wrong. Um, but like he's still my 6th rated duelist in Americas, and he'll be very good in the regular season. I can guarantee you. And people are gonna be like, "Oh, but you said he sucked," and I don't think he sucks. I just think he's not good in big games, and then he'll play like shit in playoffs and prove me right. And yeah, that's what I think this roster will do. I honestly don't think they're gonna make Madrid, um, and it's nothing to do with how good I think the rest of this roster is, which it is absolutely stacked. All right, and now onto the Brazilian teams, where we'll start with Loud, who is going to get a C plus here. And it's not even that much because they lost Aspas. Obviously, that does factor into it. They are not going to get anything over a B unless they find the perfect replacement for Aspas. But like the org wanted to let him go. There were some internal issues there. I think he was just going to go anyway. So there's not much they could have done there. I'm not going to bash them too hard. But the QCK replacement just is so weird to me. I mean, yes, he's played Duelist in the past, but when he was playing Viper, which he was playing only Viper pretty much for Furia last year, he just felt so passive the whole time to me. And putting him on Duelist here just does not make sense to me. If they were putting Tui's on Duelist and QCK on Smokes, maybe I could get behind it a little bit more. Tui's did seem a little bit more aggressive, but he wasn't like super aggressive. I think he just knew what he was supposed to do. Maybe QCK is the same way. Um, Either way, I don't think this team will be bad by any means. I still think they'll be a very good team and they will still be loud. But it does kind of concern me that this team is getting slightly worse every offseason. I do think Kawanzin and Tui's are slightly worse than what Sasi and Pancata were for this team in 2022. And I think QCK will be miles worse than what Aspas will be. Or not what Aspas will be, what Aspas was for this team. And yeah, it does concern me, but not for this year. Also, I forgot, I probably should have given some options that they probably should have picked up over QCK. I would have picked up players like Askia, even Artscene, who Furia picked, or not Furia, MIBR has Artscene, and then Liazi as well, who is playing Smokes for Furia. I would have picked up those 3 players over him, but still, this team could work out. I just think Askia is so much better than any other duelist out there, and not picking him up here is a pretty big mistake in my opinion. And now onto Furia, who honestly at first I really did not like this roster. I did not think it was going to be very good. But after watching some of these offseason tournaments, I do have a lot more faith. Just still not a ton, which is why I'm giving this a B. At first, I did not know Havoc was a former flex player here, but he is so good at the Sky and the KO. And I don't know why this guy wasn't playing this in tier 2. He would have been easily the hottest free agent of the offseason had he been. And I would not have been as low on him coming into the offseason. But I do think he is going to be very good for this team. Probably their best player, honestly. Just because I think MW is a little bit overrated. He was dominating in a tier 2 tournament with just Brazil. So I'm not going to put a ton of stock into that, even though he did look okay. He was playing very well in the Superdome tournament as well. I don't have a ton of faith in his op. Obviously, it's good. I just think he's going to be probably just a worse Zek in here, honestly. Not that he's going to be bad, because I still have him rated as like my 7th best duelist, which sounds low, but honestly is very, very good. Then you get into Khalil, who I still think is incredible on the Sentinel. Liazi, who has been playing very well in the smoke so far for this team in the offseason. Hopefully he can continue that. But my main area of concern, and the reason this isn't higher, is Conan's calling. It's not good. Obviously, they've played just 2 offseason tournaments. It can get better. But If it doesn't, this team is going to have a similar issue to what they did last year, which is just not being adaptable to me. Like, it just felt like they were carried by individual play last year from Khalil, from DG Zin, even MW at times as well. Um, you just gotta hope that that doesn't happen again and Conan can improve his calling, which is absolutely possible in these next couple months. It is just a big question mark to me. All right. And now, other than EG, we have our worst grade so far, which is MIBR, and I'm going to give them a D plus. Now, flat out, this roster isn't good. Um, just straight up, I'm going to say it. It's not a good roster. I do like some of the pieces here in Art Scene and RGL, and then FRZ has played well in the offseason tournaments on Sentinel. And that's been talked about as his main role, kind of. So hopefully that stays like that. And the coaching staff is also very good here. They have Fraud and Bazooka. Um, so hopefully, like, they can elevate some of these pieces here. JZZ is just not good. I mean, he is the most confusing ad that they made, or not ad that they made, like move that they made, keeping him. It just doesn't make sense to me. He isn't good on Duelist. He isn't good on Initiator, and they just need to find somebody else, man. Like, I don't even remember the Brazilian initiators that I watched, but all of them were better than JZZ. Like Shion in tier 2 was good. I remember his name. A lot of names I don't remember here. I'd have to go back and look. Um, Mazin's calling again, like last year on Furia, did not look great. Um, but I do think it can be elevated here by the coaching staff, and I do have a lot more faith since he has more experience calling than what's his face, Conan, to my knowledge, at least at a tier 1 level, and at a franchise level, and on a LAN stage as well. All of that he has more experience with, um, and also just the coaching staff here could definitely elevate that. Also, just some initiator players to rattle off: Shion, Crane, and I don't know how to pronounce this last one. Rytoz, I believe, RYTOZ or ZZ. Um, yeah, all of those guys were better than what JZZ is for this team, in my opinion. Um, and overall, this roster just concerns me. People were joking about, like, the second this roster was made, instantly getting 11th place. I don't think they're quite that bad, but I mean, there is definitely some 0 and 11 or 0 and 10 territory uh, that this team could end up being in towards the end of the season. All right. Now we have Leviathan, who arguably here had the best offseason as well. I think they're the only other one in contention, with NRG and I almost said EG and 100 Thieves. To me, any offseason where you get Ospas is just an instant A, and especially when you're upgrading from Taco to Ospas, that's just absurd. Um, and then the main talking point I have here is just I'm not huge on them getting rid of Shy, but for Tex, I think that gives you a little bit more upside at that Sentinel spot that Shy doesn't give you. Shy is just going to be a consistent rock, and he's going to be fucking farming like he was at LCQ. Um, Again, I don't know why they did it. I also probably could have seen them getting rid of Nazwar and putting in Shy on that initiator role, but then you kind of get into the territory of questioning his flexibility on that role. So again, I'm not concerned by it per se, but I'm not like thrilled about them getting rid of Shy, you know? But overall, I mean, they got Aspas, so they pretty much won the offseason as of right now before the EG players go to their respective teams. All right, and now we have Crew, who here I'm gonna give a B plus. I did originally have this at an A minus, but I realized that there were a few too many concerns to have this at an A minus, so I bumped it down to a B plus. Starting off with the concerns, I just don't know how I feel about keeping Klaus. I personally would have done it, but that's just because I don't think there's that many better options. To be fair, I'm not as well versed in the LATAM scene as I could be, and there could be better initiator options out there, but I just don't know. Also, Klaus probably played his way into another job at the end of last year. Um, so yeah, whatever. I think he'll be fine. Um, but my concerns don't stop there with MTA. I do think that signing is a little bit weird because he wasn't that great of an individual on Duelist from what I had watched of him. But I could be wrong, just like I was wrong about Havoc playing that flex role. But MTA has not played it before. So I just don't really see it too much with him. But he does not have a ton of experience as a player, so he could just be playing the wrong role for him. And I, again, as I said, with Havoc, could be wrong. Um, but right now, I just am a little bit concerned with it. I do like them keeping Kesnet and Melzer. That was a great move. I was a little bit concerned that they'd let Melzer go, or maybe try to replace Kesnet with another top duelist player, but they did not do that, which I'm very happy with. And then they topped that off with Shy honestly being one of the best signings individually just around the whole league. I think it's like Aspas, John, him, and then like Boostio to 100 Thieves. I know Demon 1 and Ethan to Energy, but they at the beginning of the offseason they could have done some other things. I wouldn't put that in the same tier, even though they are better players than pretty much everybody there, maybe except Aspas. Um, I just I think Shy is insane. Um, just gets kind of underrated because he's never really been the best player on a team, but he is just super solid. Can play the sentinel role very well. Can also flex around to play some Sky and some stuff like that. Um, you'd hope he can maybe pick up some other initiators and become an initiator player, just because there's a lot of sentinel player talent just in general right now, or at least it's very top heavy in my opinion. Maybe not in LATAM, but like in terms of like Brazil has a lot of good sentinel players. They could probably poach some guys from there, but that's not the point here. I do think this team did fairly well to upgrade their roster this offseason. I mean, just like every team did. Every team got better on paper, but we'll have to see which teams get better in terms of like overall, which I will do a full power ranking for every team once we know a little bit more about what's going on with every team. I think it's really just EG and Energy and also 100 Thieves that we need to really figure out. Um, but yeah, that's going to be it for the video. I'll be coming out with one of these videos for EMEA and Pacific. Um, just because I don't know a ton about China in terms of their off-season moves or even who's going to be in franchising yet. I don't think so. That's going to be a little weird to do stuff on. Most of my power rankings will just be these teams. I might. So I'm going to be doing a series where I go through all the franchising teams, but I might throw in like EDG in there just to show where I would power rank them, since I do actually know stuff about that team. Um, but the rest of it is kind of wonky, and I'd have to do a lot of work catching up on the Chinese players. So I'm just gonna wait until this season and then kind of be there. Um, and yeah, that's gonna be it for the video. I said that a while ago, and then I kept rambling about other random stuff that I'm gonna be doing. If you guys enjoyed, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.